Question 4 was all about the advertisement for the new bed. And the first one they wanted is calculate the total cost if she buys it on hire purchase according to the advertisement. And if we look at the advertisement here, we know hire purchase is when you're paying it off monthly. So we're going to be looking at this $359, which they're paying off 30 times. And there is also a deposit that must be paid as well. So our total costs are going to be $359 times the 30 months that she has to pay it. And then don't forget, we also add in that deposit of $650. And if you do that, you will get to your monthly payments adding up to $10,770 plus the $650, which gives us a total of $11,420. Then question 4.1.2 said state the month and the year when she will make her final installment if she visits the store on the 25th of January to purchase the bed. Now this was kind of a little bit of a tricky question because of this over here in the star. Only pay the first installment at the end of March. So if we're paying at the end of March and we're going to add 30 months, because you have to make 30 payments, you have to count from March onwards. So March being 1, April being 2, May being 3. And you can just count your way forwards. There doesn't really have to be much of a trick to it besides doing that. When you do that, you will end up reaching August 2025. So that's the answer for 4.1.2 is August 2025. Counting forward from March. Then we've got 4.2, which is the currencies, and it's all about her daughter sending her some money. And they're asking us there that she says she will have to add more than 500 Rand to the money that her daughter sent her if she wants to pay cash for the bed. Verify if your statement is correct, showing all calculations. So first thing, notice that as soon as we see the word verify, you must have that concluding statement at the end. I always say when you get your papers, go through them in the beginning and just highlight any of the questions where you see things like verify or give your answer in this unit, so that when you're answering that question, it's a little, remember to check this. Okay, so we're working with the cash price, and our cash price is going to be 6,499, so we know that. And the daughter is sending her £250. So first thing we need to do, convert those pounds into rand so we can see if she has enough money or not. And we're going to look here, rands per unit of currency, and it's pounds, so we're going to be working with this 22 exchange rate. Now you could work with this currency per units of rands. It's not wrong to work with that. You will get an ever so slightly different answer because of the decimals, but generally speaking, if you have a currency, work with the one with the side that has the per unit of that currency, because if £1 is 22 Rand, £2 will be 44 Rand, and £250 will just be going 250 times by the 875,174. And notice that I am not rounding off my value, especially when it comes to exchange rates. You don't round mid calculation, you put the whole number into your calculator like that, and you should get back to your answer of 5718,7935. Now at this point, it would be okay to round off, because what we're now doing is we're saying, do you have enough money to pay? And when we're talking about paying, you're not going to be paying parts of a cent. So at this point, you're okay with saying, okay, well, therefore, she will have approximately 5718,79 rands from her daughter. Now, is that enough for her bed? And is she correct in saying that she will need more than 500 Rand to make up the difference between what she received and what she has? So all we're going to do is we're going to say, look, the bed would be 6,499. We need to subtract off the 5718,79 that she gets from her daughter. And when you do that, you're going to get to 780 Rand and 21 cents. That is definitely more than 500 Rand, so therefore she is correct. And you write that out, she is correct at the end of your calculation. Right, question 4.3. 4.3 was about Annexure E, which was this lovely graph over here. First thing they want you to name is what type of graph it is. It was a stacked or compound bar graph. It's not a double bar graph, because a double bar graph is when the bars of the same category are sitting next to each other. It does this kind of a thing. That's a double bar graph. A stacked or a compound bar graph is when they are on top of each other like this over here. So stacked or compound. Why is this an appropriate type or the most appropriate choice to display this data? Right, you cannot just say things like it's easy to read or it's clear to read, because that would be true of any type of graph if it's well constructed. The reason you want to use a graph like this is because it allows for comparison. It makes it easy to compare values, and that's kind of the key thing that we're looking at. Is it's the same answer you would give for a double bar graph, because this could have been done in a double bar graph as well. But when you have graphs where you're trying to see how do two values compare to each other, like in this case the on time versus the late registrations, that is where these kind of graphs become relevant. So the key takeaway with why is this the most appropriate choice is because it allows you to compare data sets within the same category. So in this case, within the same age group, it allows you to compare the two different data sets. Then you were asked, describe the trend for the late registrations. Late registrations, if we look at our graph, is going to be these dark colors. So we're not looking at the light gray at the bottom, but we're looking at the dark colors. And trend is saying basically what happened. So there's three main things that we see happening. And you can divide it into these three kind of regions of what's going on here. In our first region over here, you can see it's getting less, right? It goes from 32 down to 21 down to 7. So we want to say from 10 to 24, it's decreasing. Okay, you must state the section, the age groups that you're talking about. In this middle section, they're very similar. 5.35, then 5.2. It's very similar. So you could say at this point that from 25 to 39, it is similar. We can't say it's exactly constant. Sorry, I don't really have space to write this. We can say it's very similar values. Okay, you can't really say constant because it's not exactly constant. It is changing, but it's similar values and very close together. It would also be fair to say it was stable, it had very little difference, and again you want to mention your age groups here of being 25 to 39. So in that middle category. Then the last category here, where we're going from 44 to 54, you can see here there is now a big increase that's happened. And that was where those 3 marks for that question actually were coming from. From saying first it decreases, that was 1 mark in that group. Then it was very similar or very close to each other, or you could say stable. And then the last one was saying it was increasing at that point. You must mention these bottom categories though. If you just say it decreased, then it increased, then it was, or it decreased, then it was stable, then it increased, you are going to lose at least 1 to 2 marks because you are missing those descriptors. Okay. Then the last question on this graph, they were asking you if a newborn baby was randomly selected from mothers of the 30 to 34 age group, what is the probability that her baby was registered late? And to write it as a simplified fraction. Well, if we look at that category, 30 to 34, which is over there, you can see there it's 5% are late registered. So that already tells us the probability that her baby was registered late was 5%. But they want it as a simplified fraction. Well, 5% is 5 out of every 100 babies. Remember, that's percentage, 5 out of every 100. And then simplified fraction, I can divide both of those by 5, I get 1 out of 20. You could also just put 5% into your calculator, press equals, it will get you to this 1 over 20 as well. Okay, that was the end of question 4. 5.2, and really we're only doing 5.2 because 5.3 doesn't have the annexure. We've got a story about Joe Plummer, and they give you his call-out cost, his labor fee, and everything, and they're asking you if he offers a 5% discount on his total fees, and the job is 13 kilometers away and 3.5 hours of labor, what would it cost? And so you need to kind of break this down into steps. So first thing they're going to definitely pay is this $4.50 for the call out fee. Okay, that's a compulsory fee. It tells you that it's compulsory. They have to pay that. The labor fee is $5.55, but they tell you there the first hour is free, and thereafter it is per hour or part thereof. And this is the big key important thing that we want to have over here, this or part thereof, because that is the thing that is telling us that even if it is 1.5 hours, you're going to pay for 2. Even if it is 3 hours and 1 minute, you're going to pay for 4 hours. So we need to look at the labor. They tell us it's 3.5 hours that we are charging for, but the first hour is free. So really it's 2.5 hours. So we have 2.5 hours, but you're going to pay for 3 because of that or part thereof. So we're going to say 550 times by 3, which is going to give us 1,650 rand. Then the next part that we have is our travel costs. They tell us here it's 12.75 per kilometer, and that firstly the first 5 kilometers are free, and they also are charging per kilometer or part thereof. So we're doing 13 kilometers, but we don't need to pay for all 13. The first 5 are free. So I'm going to say 13 minus the 5 free. It gives me 8 that I'm paying for. And I'm going to say 12.75 times by 8, which is 102. Then we need to add those together. So we're going to say 450 plus our 1,650 plus our 102, and you are going to get to 2,202. The last thing though that we mustn't forget about was that discount, right? There was a discount there of 5%. We can't forget about that. So now we have our total cost. We need to take off 5%. So you can either say I'm going off the page there a little bit. Let's go this way rather. We can either take this 202 and then subtract 5% of 2,202, or you could just say what is 95% of 2,202. Both are legitimate methods. It'll get you to 2,091.90, 2,091 rand 90, and that was your final answer. Okay, it was a 5-mark question, so there was quite a lot in it. You got, just do it in a red here, the 5 marks came from 3 marks had to do with this. 1 mark was for working out the cost of the labor. 1 mark was for working out the travel costs correctly. 1 mark was for correctly adding all 3 values, so that's where you would have lost a mark if you lost your call out fee. There was a mark for subtracting the 5%, and then your final mark was for your final answer. That's where those 5 came from. So that is the end of question 5.2 and week 2's activities. It would have been out of a total of 35 because we can exclude question 5.3 because we don't have that annexure.